Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who is not too rare for all of this green hair. I'm going to be reviewing the album It's Almost Dry by Pusha-T, and as you can tell, I'm excited. Probably the easiest thing to say, or the most exciting thing whenever an artist comes out with a new album, is if they've grown. And Pusha-T has grown. Pusha-T has done something which he seemed reluctant to do, which is ever move past crack rap after crack rap after crack rap. Of course, crack and the selling of crack is a big part of this album. But what I love is that he manages to grow without ever seeming preachy. He doesn't even rap about growing. He doesn't really talk about growing. But it's very clear when you listen to this album that he still has that same bravado, that same position, that same posture, that sort of easy dominance that he has over presumably the crack game and definitely over the rap game. But it's just a little bit more. It's more than just different ways of talking about fish and chickens and snow and the color white. He's able to grow beyond that. Almost every line that he delivers on this album is killer. Like almost every line you're like... So like some lines are the word damn in 30-foot font and bold. But the ones that aren't are still in bold, right? Like basically every line here is great. What I find interesting is he doesn't fall back on some of his traditional sort of trademarks, like saying yuck. He doesn't do that as much. He manages to change up his flow a lot. He's sort of smoother, but not softer. The one thing that I don't hear a lot of on this album that I love with Pusha T, but I think is okay, is he does less of the, what I consider to be basically avant-garde poetry of crack rap, right? So, like, because you have to speak in a code, because there's a lot of codifications and working around different styles of speech, it creates a lot of bizarre sounding sentences. You know, you hear that a lot in Griselda, you hear that a lot in a lot of Wu-Tang Clan stuff, and you definitely heard that a lot in Pusha T's albums with lines like, "You've got the tennis balls for the wrong sport." Like, that's a line off of Daytona, which you see behind me, I'll talk about soon. But there isn't as much of that. Instead, most of the lines here actually have meaning and talk about his life and his growth. And it's worth pointing out the title itself. The title itself refers to growth. I know. It's Almost Dry refers to a stage of preparation where you turn cocaine into crack by using baking soda and boiling it in the water. It doesn't actually seem as hard as they make it seem in the crack raps to be a chef. I don't know, never done it. But then, there's a stage where it has to dry in order to become the rock that is crack rock. So, okay, there is part of him that's like, haha, I bet you didn't think I could talk about crack. But also, it implies like it's almost dry. It's progressing. It's growing. I think the it in this album could also be Pusha. It could actually be him. He is almost dry. It implies growth. I want to also say one thing about the cover of the album. It's done by American artist Sterling Ruby, who is a very real deal, important, up-and-coming artist. He's only like 50, okay? So he's not like some old guard. And I just want to remind you about the role that hip-hop is playing in modern art. It's a huge role. Rock and roll never paid this much attention to modern art. Okay, you got me. I've got the Velvet Underground behind me with Andy Warhol. Okay, Andy Warhol did a Rolling Stones cover, did a Velvet Underground cover, fine. But in general, when rock and roll led the culture, it didn't try, as far as I can think of, to really bring in modern art. I think we can thank Jay-Z, whose ghost looms high and heavy over this entire album, over this entire genre, over this entire culture, over this entire country. We can thank him with how much he insists on his pride in having Basquiat's and having Warhols and bringing that in simultaneously, having Kanye bring in artists like Murakami and trying to make them big, and even Drake. Even Drake jumps on board and gets Damien Hirst on board, okay? I know. Everyone makes fun of the cover of Certified Lover Boy, and certainly I don't think Pusha T would want me favorably comparing Certified Lover Boy to this album, but both show that rap artists, hip-hop heads, are using and employing and validating modern art in a way that no other popular music has ever done. So check me in the comments. Like, I could be wrong. Correct me in the comments if I'm not thinking about it right. You know, I guess Duran Duran like popularized a certain kind of photography. You can check me on that. But going back to this idea of this cover, you know, and you'll see I do have Daytona on vinyl behind me. I bought it, and when I bought it, I had the option to buy the version that came with a Pusha-T autograph, which I have, and I keep, and I love having. You know, like, I do think there's a sort of growth from the image of Whitney Houston's death bathroom to a modern artist to this theme of It's Almost Dry. And I also want to circle back on something that I say almost every time I talk about so-called crack rap, or rap about the crack trade. The bad guys is us, is the country of America. Like, we're responsible. Okay? Just remember, the war on drugs was not the drug dealers' ideas. The mass incarceration is an indictment of America, not of the people who are in jail. Let's not forget, the CIA actively protected the people who were trafficking the cocaine into America in the 80s. The drugs that were being sold by Pusha T were being brought in by people who the CIA actively protected. Okay? So don't be like, whew. And of course, it's a big joke, right? Why did the CIA actively protect the people who imported cocaine? Because those people were fighting communism. And then they go on to spread crack, make a blight all the way throughout all the inner cities of America. And then we have these figures like Jay-Z and Pusha T who come to incarnate the crack dealer, which is itself a perfect example of free market capitalism in all of its savagery, in all of its sort of dirty glory. So they succeeded by supporting the narco-traffickers, Reagan and the rest of the Republicans and the rest of the government, for that matter, not just Republicans, succeeded in really emphasizing the importance of capitalism in the face of communism. So that's my little political speech for the day. But what do you want? You come here, you don't want ratings, although you're going to get some ratings. You don't want ratings, you don't want reactions, you want my thoughts. Here they are. My most controversial thought, maybe not, is it's definitely not as good as Daytona. I'm sorry, Pusha T. Like, seriously, I want to like this more. I love its ambition. But Daytona is just so short and so perfect. I don't think you can take that and expand it out. I think whatever Kanye was doing with those albums in 2018, right before I started this channel, God, I really should have started this channel when that happened. I would have had some views in the beginning. But you know, like, whatever he was doing with Kids See Ghost and with Ye and with this, each little album is a little bit of perfection. But I don't think that It's Almost Dry is like much worse. It's just different. I'll also say I've been watching interviews with Pusha T, and he might be the best interview in hip hop. Like, it's not just that he does such a good job of sort of weaving between the industry and the street, but that's very important, right? Like, he's worked as like a talent agent basically for Kanye. He's worked as the leader of good music. He has a capacity to speak as a sort of business person and as a street guy. But I don't know. I watched his interview with the Breakfast Club. Breakfast Club themselves are very underrated as interviewers. And he just came across as so affable, so sweet, like just so smart. Like, one thing he said was he is off trying to be the realest guy in the room. Thank you, Pusha T. You don't need to do it anymore. You don't need to be the realest guy in the room anymore. It's okay. And instead what he says is he wants to be the Martin Scorsese of street rap. And I think that's an interesting idea. Probably my favorite part of the interview is they ask him, do you think you get enough respect in the hip-hop game? I've heard 100 rappers ask this question, and I've never heard any of them answer what Push answered. Yes, I get enough respect. Awesome. You know, It's Almost Dry. This is a person who's in a state of growth. Also, he talks about his businesses and how he works in medical transport because his mom had kidney issues. He talks about how his parents passed and how that's impacted him, which gives him good perspective. And listen, I'm the same age as him, which I'll be talking about soon. My mom died a while ago. That gave me some perspective. It's interesting to see him because so often in his music he tries to present himself as this sort of all-consuming capitalist monster of crack. And then in his interviews, he just really comes across as just a really sweet and smart guy. One of the coolest parts of all the interviews that I've read is the basic structure of this album. It's 10 minutes into this album, and I haven't talked about the most exciting thing about this album, which isn't even Pusha T and his growth. It's the fact the whole thing is produced by Pharrell and Kanye. The whole thing. How cool is this? Seriously. I mean, how amazing is this? To have two of the greatest and most influential producers in the history of music, full stop, in the history of hip-hop, full stop, together working with like their joint love of Pusha T uniting them. Each of them gets 6 songs, and Pusha T explained what he did. He didn't trick them, but he'd be like, hey, Pharrell, listen to this beat that Ye played. And Pharrell would be like, damn, okay, that's pretty good. And then he'd make a beat. And be like, hey, Ye, have a listen to what Pharrell's doing. And so he got them, these two giants on the Mount Rushmore of hip-hop producers, probably, got them to sort of get that hunger back, to be fighting with each other. Now, I haven't done a video on Genius yet. I may, I'm not sure. Time's passed on that. But one of my favorite parts is when Pharrell meets Kanye, because it's that moment where you understand whatever game recognizes game. It's like you're seeing these two greats really meeting each other. And so this is what I'm going to do. I don't do grades. I don't do that. But I can't help it. Pusha tried to put these two producers in context. So I am going to have the Professor Sky's Pusha T producer pop-off competition. I'm going to give them a number out of 10 for each of these beats, understanding that all of these beats on any other album are all 8s, 9s, or 10s, okay? So I'm going to be grading them by a different scale. So for each beat, I'm going to do that, and then at the end, I'm going to declare who won, Pharrell or Kanye. Is that a stupid idea? Tell me in the comments. Smash the like bucket, subscribe. Let's get into the album. Now, I'd like to start off with my stamp. So I don't always go in order. This is what I think to be the example song, Just So You Remember. An amazing, amazing song. Now what's interesting is this is the second time in 2 weeks that I have shown you the Tokyo Drift soundtrack. Why is that? Well, I reviewed the Nigo album, which featured a lot of Kanye and Pharrell and a lot of Pusha T, right? And this is another very Nigo-heavy album with Pharrell. And it's a soundtrack album. It's the only Fast and Furious movie I've ever seen. And I bought the soundtrack because it's a really good soundtrack. But I think this is not a coincidence. I think Kanye got into a Pharrell mindset and started listening to Pharrell stuff. And then got out this album and heard track 2 on this album. Track 2 on this album is a song called 6 Days Remix by DJ Shadow, featuring the artist formerly known as Mos Def, Yasin Bey, back when he was still known as Mos Def. Oh my God. When I bought this album, I bought it as a joke, because the song, If You Really Want to Know How It Is in Tokyo, I just played it to piss off my nephew. Seriously, that's why I bought this. I bought this as a goof. A Yucatan goof. But, oh my God. This song, DJ Shadow at his best, scratching up this really weird old song called 6 Days by Colonel Bagshot, who's singing about the end of times and about how a nuclear war started almost on accident. It's only Monday! And then DJ Shadow's, go off. And then Mos Def comes in. Oh my God. It is so good. But what's cool is that Kanye samples the same song for this track, Just So You Remember. And it's so cool because, in a way, it's the same sample. I think this is not a coincidence. I don't know. I mean, that's a pretty deep crate to dig. To come up with that 20 years later, I don't think it's a coincidence. But the original, if you listen to the original by Colonel Bagshot, this totally never heard of them British band from the 60s, the bass is weird and ominous. And the thing is with Pusha T, you need ominous. That's why Daytona's so good. Even when it's upbeat, it's ominous. It's always good. So this this doo 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 or doo 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 almost reminded me of that "Hey Kids, Rock and Roll," that song from the 80s. Just this great space with this word coming in, and then some of the best verses on the entire album by Pusha. Seeing you rappers apply for the stimulus, living a lie but die for your images. like they're applying for the stimulus check. I flew your B word to Cuba just for the thrill of it. I ain't go to show you what you shoulda did. Like, that's next level. Like, not saying I effed your B, but saying I was going to, but then I stood her up. It's like, that's way harder. And then there's like, he refers to himself as a Joker smile. He talks a lot about the Joker. I think I read somewhere that he was watching the Joker basically on repeat while making this album, which is interesting. But there's this weird cackling sound in the back, which no, it doesn't happen here, actually. No, that's only on the Pharrell songs. So we'll come back to that later. I also really love this is another thing that Jay-Z, like Jay-Z's Black album, I think it was the first one where he really made it clear that he could still rap about the streets, but he's also going to rap about being rich now, about what that means. That's part of bringing in the art, part of bringing in, I don't know, what was that on 444, where he raps about not buying an apartment building in a part of Manhattan, right? Like just stuff that we can't possibly relate to. These kind of, I don't know, bougie flexes. Look outside, the landscape's ridiculous. Motion lights surrounded, meticulous. Architectural digest my premises. Right? This whole line, and then he brings it back to street-like. That hole in the attic was not for a ceiling fan, implying that there's still drugs and guns and money up there. Just a great, great line. And then he sort of tags it with the Book of Blow, know that I'm Genesis. Just every line is just so good. Like the problem is I have like 12 pages of notes and most of them are just me quoting him. And so I'm not going to do that the entire time. Oh, I forgot to put a grade for the beat. Just so you remember, I'm giving that a 9. Super strong, awesome, amazing, great dive, great atmosphere. I love all these details, how he flexes on people for being poor. We fight for the bill, you N-words still chipping in. Like, that's just so funny. Like, when you're rich, you fight for the bill, as opposed to trying to divide it up. Little tiny details. My boys in the hood is mixed with the menaces. The cane is sugar and cut by Dominicans. Just this like very deep and funny line about Boys in the Hood and then Menace to Society, and then Kane is a character from Menace to Society, and then mixing it in with Dominican Republic where there's a lot of sugar. Kane is sugar cut by Dominicans, all mixed up together. And then of course it gets kind of sad at the end where he talks about his folks in the box serving life sentences. Always the specter of incarceration and avoiding incarceration is everywhere on this, which again I would argue is a reason that America has failed. The war on drugs is a great example of the great failure of our country. So I'm just going to say that again. I only say it because I think it's true. So let's go through the rest of the album a little bit quicker. Start off pretty well for Kanye here. He's got a 9 on the board. Going to start off with the album Brambleton. This is not my favorite track on the album. It's interesting because it feels like it's a carryover from Daytona. So Daytona ends with a very specific diss track, the one on Drake, Infrared. Although at the time when I heard it, I wasn't paying attention to music, so I didn't know it was about anybody. This is like a bitter score to settle with his former manager. It's kind of funny because he talks a lot in his interviews and even in his raps about his current manager, this guy named Steven. And it sort of reminds you like, he really is an industry guy. Like, he's an industry guy who hasn't gone industry. So this whole song is this really bitter, bitter song all about this guy who I guess talked about him in an interview. Pharrell's production on here. So at first I gave it a 7, and then I gave it an 8. And I ended up giving this track a 9 as well. Just because this little melody that Pharrell writes, this little keyboard melody has just a couple extra notes on it that you don't expect. And then the way that he adds his own voice, why would I wanna? I think that's Pharrell and not Pusha. I'm not sure, you can tell me. But it's just, again, Pusha T really thrives on atmosphere with his menacing voice and a good menacing beat behind. It just works so well. I do really like the song in the way that's very situated and very placed. The whole album is very much placed in Norfolk, Virginia, and Virginia Beach, Virginia, and this whole mid-Atlantic rap scene, which is where Pharrell came from, or whatever. Like that whole Virginia scene is where Pharrell and Pusha-T both got started, so it kind of makes sense. I do think it's funny, he basically sings the chorus. It's kind of an emo chorus if you take it out of context. Why would I wanna hold you down when I know you know the past is your go-to now? Why would I want to hold you down? It's kind of funny. He doesn't sing like that. That's not how Pusha T sounds, but it sounds kind of emo to me. But what I love here is this new flow that he has, where he's angry, but he doesn't sound angry, he doesn't sound scary. And this is where we get that cackle in the back. I'm just going to call it the cackle, which happens on almost all the Pharrell tracks. I think all of them. And I was trying to think back about Pharrell's back catalog, and is this like some producer tag of Pharrell's? And I don't know. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of Pharrell's catalog. I remember when Oh No came out, and I remember when What came out, and I remember trying to figure out who made these songs, because nothing sounded like Oh No on the radio when that song when those songs came out, and then those guys came out with that song, the whole album by Old Dirty Bastard. It was very clear that Pharrell was on some next stuff. But then I turned 25. I suffered what I call mid-20s music death. I stopped paying attention. I never even listened to Eclipse album. Oh, you just downvoted me. I'm sorry. I never listened to Eclipse album when they were out. I was too busy going to grad school. So I don't know if this is actually his producer tag, but it should be, because it's this great cackle in the back that really adds texture. And every time you hear it, at least every time I hear it, I'm psyched on the album. Some really interesting things were in the chorus. He talks about being a godfather to this person's daughter. And then he makes it very specific, saying, I know why Michael kisses Fredo in Godfather 2. One of the great moments in cinematic history, and I think it's really well described here. I really like the specificity of all the references here. Next up is Let the Smokers Shine the Coops. Agitating beat, Pharrell. I like the laugh in the back, but it just needs more development. You're going to get a 6 on this one, Pharrell. I'm sorry. There's a point where this is it cuts out and it's just the piano and something's going to happen, and then it goes away. And this whole thing feels a little bit closer to that future style of Pharrell. What I like about this album, in Pharrell's production, is he doesn't sound like he's trying to be futuristic. This whole song, I think, is easily the worst song on the album. Calls himself Cocaine's Dr. Seuss. That's okay. It's not that. I do like the line, the dope game killed my youth. I want to once again make a plug for FD Signifier's video, which was ostensibly about the Will Smith incident, but is actually about black boyhood and trauma. It's a masterpiece on YouTube. It's one of the most instructive things you can watch if you ever had that feeling I wish I understood better things I don't understand about the American experience for people who aren't me. That's a really good video. I don't know. But in general, the song, it just doesn't hit for me. Coming up next, though, is Dreaming of the Past. There's a reason that Kanye is Kanye. If there was ever a 10. Oh my God. Okay, I'm just going to get into this. So the sample is from the song Jealous Guy, as performed by Donny Hathaway in 1972, which was a cover of the song Jealous Guy by John Lennon. Which means, if you're paying attention, with the Paul McCartney songs, Kanye now has incorporated half of the Beatles into his music. Moving on. He pitches this sample a little bit, just a hair. And then there's this great piano that Donny Hathaway has on his version that isn't really on the original version, at least not like this. Almost a honky-tonk piano. And the way that these words are merged in, it's just a reminder nobody plays with words and with singing and integrating old songs into new songs better than Kanye. And this song's the only song only produced by Kanye. The rest of Kanye's stuff, he has co-producers. This one, it's just him. I just want to take a second, just because I feel like it. Because I like talking about music. To talk about the song Jealous Guy by John Lennon. First of all, if you are a jealous guy, I used to be a jealous guy, I'm not anymore. If you think this is slicked back, this is pushed back. I used to be a jealous guy, not anymore. But when I was, this song exactly expressed that feeling, like that feeling you were going to lose somebody. It's a heartbreaking, beautiful song, but it almost wasn't. Originally, this song was called On the Road to Rishikesh, like a place in India. It was like one of the songs that they wrote when they were in India in 1968, when the Beatles went. So instead of, I was dreaming of the past, it would have been On the Road to Rishikesh. You're trying to tell me Kanye is going to sample On the Road to Rishikesh? Do you know why John Lennon changed it? Because Yoko Ono told him to write something more personal. Hey, you don't like Yoko Ono? A, I'm sorry. Yoko Ono's wonderful. B, she at least did this. And this is not intentional, right? This isn't intentional. There's no way that Kanye is on this level, and I think he had the beat before. Pusha describes how he had to beg for this beat. But it's interesting that in a way, Pusha's pushing himself to be more personal and more in touch with his emotions and who he really is as a person, in the same way that instead of singing about Rishikesh and being the child of nature and all that crap that John Lennon was going to sing about when he was high off his ass in India, maybe he didn't do drugs in India, I don't know. Instead, it's this really personal song. And you can't really screw up Jealous Guy. It's just that song. It became a #1 hit for Roxy Music as a tribute to John Lennon after he died. But what's great about this is Donny Hathaway with this beautiful voice singing this song a year after it was released. And so it's just this thumping piano. I think if you put this right next to Homecoming off of Graduation, they'd go really well together. They don't sound that similar, but the kind of piano and the singing. And it's just such a good song. And then Pusha T is doing all sorts of stuff he doesn't usually do. Like he's basically singing this hook. I got plenty. I got plenty. And all these quotes, like, I mean, clearly the line of the album, you're hollering top 5, I only see top me. Award shows the only way you B-words could rob me. Just forget it. That's why Pusha T is Pusha T. That's why when he says, do you get enough respect? He says, yeah, because everybody respects lines like that. He talks about window stickers and window lickers. And I secretly think that's because he spent time in France. And what you call someone who's a window shopper in French is a window licker. Like they stare at it and like they lick the window. Lèche vitrine. So I think so. I think that's what it is. I think he's sort of saying like window shoppers as opposed to people who actually buy. And then he has this most beautiful line. Walk it down or maybe break it down or something like Brady. Gets better with time. Didn't have to reinvent the wheel, just a better design. So this is the point where I hate numerology. And that's one thing about hip-hop is a lot of rap artists are really into numerology. Sucks to be me, loving hip-hop and hating numerology. That said, Pusha T, Kanye West, Tom Brady, and Professor Sky were all born in 1977. I'm just saying, it's a good year for getting older. With those four, to have this discussion of Brady produced by someone who's 44, rapped by someone who's 44, in a young person's game. Hip-hop and pop music is a young person's game. There's a lot of turnover. They're still rapping. They're still going. And hey, I'm still here talking about it. Then we have Kanye's verse, which is the lost opportunity of all lost opportunities. He sounds like he has a cold. He sounds sort of like he's trying to sound like a Cudi feature. But like we have a whole song called Jealous Guy. Kanye, your jealousy and your inability to control people around you is one of your defining features, and you, of all people, know that. You are so good at describing what a piece of garbage you are to the people around you. Why did you lose this chance? Why are you talking about not buying the Fresh Prince's kitchen because you didn't like Fresh Prince mansion because you didn't like the design of the kitchen? You screwed up, Kanye. Damn it. So close to being like a perfect, it's like so close to being a perfect song. Like if Kanye, I don't mind the production of his voice, but if he had actually like maybe taken some of the lines from later and like actually talked about his own jealousy and his fear of losing something, that really would have been something. But he did give us a 10 beat. So what are we going to do? Next song is Neck and Wrist, which I intentionally did not review when it came out as a single because I wanted to experience it in the context of the album. This is where that Breakfast Club interview is great, where Pusha-T just sends it to Jay-Z, sent him the verse and the hook, and just says, outdo me. And he says only he can do that. And that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing about age, probably, too, that he's not insecure. Pusha-T knows Jay-Z is a better rapper than him. Unless your name is Jay-Z, you should know that Jay-Z is better than you, right? So he just says, just outdo it. So the beat itself, it's another Pharrell beat, a nice kind of sloppy beat. I think the sample, the drums, they're not the exact same, but they're very similar to the What's Beef drum line, which is a quote from a sample from Al Green. I don't know, just a great combination of beat and synthesizer. I'm gonna have to give you a 9 on Neck and Wrist, Pharrell. You really nailed it on that one as well. I really like Push's flow on here. He sort of does a totally different flow where he's kind of sing-songy, he goes up high and then goes low. References Richard Pryor, which is always sad. And then there's this weird bridge with Pharrell. Dope House had a line, and this is the thing. Jay-Z is so exciting. When Jay-Z is going to be performing, when Jay-Z is going to have a verse, and you see that name in the parentheses featuring Jay-Z, you're just thinking, where's Poochie? All you want to know is where's the Jay-Z verse. You don't care about anything else, okay? This is watching the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, okay? You don't care about the plate spinners that came before. You just want to see Jay-Z, no matter how good the beat is, how good the other rhymes are. And so what I love that Pharrell does is he includes this bridge, and then he does a weird auto-tune version of the bridge, and then there's some more space to the point where you're just sitting at your phone screaming give me the J verse. And of course Jay-Z does not disappoint. He took that little thing that Pusha does, that kind of flow, and then he does it. My wife, who's been learning a lot about hip-hop over the last couple of years, she's from Serbia, so she didn't really grow up with it. She likes Jay-Z now. She'd never heard Jay-Z before she met me. Now she likes Jay-Z. And she's like, is that really Jay-Z? She couldn't believe it was actually him because he was able to switch up his flow and do this weird thing. Why is it so much fun to study hip-hop? Do you know how much fun it is to think this much about rap music? To have this happen? Have this album with Pharrell and Kanye, first of all, just that's so exciting. And then one of the best rappers out there making an album. And then Jay-Z comes on, and then his line, he's doing something completely different for his entire verse. I wouldn't listen to Reason either. That's what he says on the line, meaning Reasonable Doubt, and also listen to Reason, which is that Jay-Z is the realest, best out there. It is a little bit of an abrupt ending. If I had one... Well, I have several criticisms of the album, which you've heard already. But sort of most general criticism is sometimes it feels a little rough, a little underpolished, the ending sometimes. I don't know. Next song is Just So You Remember, which I've already discussed. And then comes Diet Coke, which I've already talked about on a previous video. I'll include a link to it up there, if I remember. I often forget to do this. Tell me in the comments if there's nothing up there, okay? I didn't like this song. I like this song, but I didn't love it when I listened to it as a single. But now when I listen to the album, I'm I can't wait for that piano. So I think that's a sign that it's actually a really, really great song. I don't think it's up there with the rest of them. I'm going to give Diet Coke an 8. I don't think it's an amazingly great song, but I do think it's a very good song. The main issue that I have with the song is that kind of roughness again, and also the flow is a little bit sort of old style Pusha. I do think it's funny in the context of that Arby's beef song that he had, where he had beef with McDonald's. It's hard not to associate this song and the Arby's song together because it's Diet Coke and Arby's. It all feels very fast food. And I don't know, there's some kind of fish stickiness to it. I do like how the beginning starts off with today's price is not yesterday's price because that's the world that we live in with the inflation that we're under. I don't think that's on purpose. But I do really like it. Also, I really like the reference to Missy Elliott. Missy was her only misdemeanor. Obviously saying the only crime they got caught for, but I just want to make a small pitch, okay? I'm not from the Mid-Atlantic region. I'm not from Virginia. I'm not from Maryland. I used to date a girl from the Gaithersburg region. I know it a little bit, but I'm not from there. But in between these two artists, these two autographed albums that I have here, we have some really important artists, especially when you consider the influence of Pharrell. I think Missy Elliott is easily top 10 most influential musicians of the past 30 years. I mean, definitely. I mean, unbelievably good. And just so you know, you can buy this right now in the Warner Brothers store for $25. You can buy this album, her last album, which is really, really good. I'm probably going to do a video sometime about how good this album is, and it comes to you autographed. So I'm just saying, Warner Brothers doesn't pay me money, but I mean, how do you not get a Missy Elliott autograph? You know? She's like the reason why a lot of the music we listen to is that way. So I do like that reference, this kind of Virginia pride. If you take the fact that Timbaland and Pharrell, Pusha-T, and Missy Elliott all come from that region, it's a pretty good argument for it being up there. I mean, maybe not up there with LA and New York, but definitely one of the great centers of hip-hop culture. Next song is called Rock and Roll, featuring Kid Cudi and Kanye. I'll talk about that in a second. Starts with a sample of Beyonce, slightly pitched up. That should make you feel old, you know? Like, she's an oldie, you know? like when we think about sampling Beyonce, Kanye always samples old soul hits and pitches them up, and here we have this, where it's sampling Beyonce, someone who's still there. Apparently Pharrell added the drums, so it's kind of both of them at the same time. I do really like this beat, although I don't think it's up to the standard of the rest. I'm actually going to give this a 7. Oh, geez, they're all going down. I don't mean for them all go down the Kanye side there. I like it, but it's not amazing. I actually don't like the way the drums interact with the sample. I think the voice sample is novel and it's interesting, but it doesn't quite have the texture that I like. Like, part of the reason why it's good that Kanye samples older soul people is just because those albums had more texture. They were less digital, they had more atmosphere, they had more acoustic instruments, more, real instruments. So sampling Beyonce and pitching her up leaves it a little bit dry, I think. Am I saying something bad about Beyonce and you're going to have to sick the queen bees on me? Not really. You can if you want. I do love the way Cudi comes in on this and adds his Cudi-ness, his just Cudi style choruses. I love him in this context. I really like the kind of goofiness of Pusha on this. Talking about his careers in 8th Gear. Calls out one of the members of the Temptations. I be getting at these coins as I'm breaking down the brick. Make a jump to each level. Super Mario exists. So now he has to keep talking about coke and different things. So he talks about, cocaine, bricks, breaking them down and getting a coin. Super Mario exists. It's pretty funny. I'm in the trap. I'm the fix. I'm the broker. I'm the Joker. In the deck, Arthur Fleck, when he's pissed, 666. So again, this kind of goofy relationship to the Joker movie. Kanye has a whole verse about his divorce, which is okay. It seems out of place. I feel like Kanye's participation in this whole project, you can sort of see how he's fraying at the edges. Because his verses don't quite mix. He sounds a little bit off. There's a point in the Kanye documentary, in the third part, where you just tell he's just gone. Just emotionally, it's sad. There's no part of me that's laughing right now, right? There's nothing funny about Kanye's difficulties, even though people choose to laugh at him. So I sort of get that feeling with this verse. I do like this one line, pushing me over the edge. Don't know if I'm falling or flying. It reminds me of a great French movie called La Haine, which is all about the people in the poorer parts of Paris who are struggling through life. And there's a joke that one of the main characters tells about someone who jumps off of the roof of a building, and as he goes down floor by floor, he goes, "Jusqu'ici tout va bien." So far, so good. So far, so good, right? So when you jump off of a bridge, when you jump off of the top of a building, the entire time you're falling, you can say so far, so good. It's only when you hit that you know that you had a problem. So that's this line here. Don't know if I'm falling or flying. I think that's the state that Kanye's in right now. And it seems like he's falling, but he's fallen before. I mean, Pablo was a falling album. Ye was a falling album. Kids See Ghost was a flying album. Speaking of Kids See Ghost, this song makes me sad. Because Kanye's verse ends and then Cudi's comes in and it reminds you that Kids See Ghost is one of the greatest things that Kanye's ever done. It's just a delightful work, and Kanye and Cudi's collaboration over the years, it's really sad that mental health issue that makes Kanye the way Kanye is got in the way of their friendship. It's really sad. Next song is called Call My Bluff. Basically an old school song. Like what I like about Pharrell on this album, and I'm gonna give him a 9 on Call My Bluff, because I just love the old school simple bounce of this. Just really cool and really goes well with this weird flow. In the chorus, there's like no drums. It's very sparse, great dynamics. That cackle, is like everywhere. Weird little sounds, atmosphere. And then just the menace of Pusha-T, 1-800 Call My Bluff. I called the number, Pusha-T. I called 1-800 Call My Bluff. Now you said in the second verse, call my bluff, gonna answer hello. Service with a smile when I hand out halos. Shot clock shooters, when they point them, they go. Now everybody's asking what happened, they know. None of that happened. I called 1-800 Call My Bluff, and I got like a, hello, singles. Welcome to the party line. If you're a male, press 1. If you're a female, press 2. So I don't know, Push. I was expecting to get a hold of you, or maybe some of your shooters, but I just got nothing. One thing that's interesting about that second verse is, and I don't have the CD on me because I can't find my copy of The Adventures of Slick Rick, but he is totally copying Slick Rick. And I think that's a really interesting thing to do, because Slick Rick, underappreciated old school rapper, went to jail, came back, never really had a comeback. But his sing-songy delivery, I never would have thought would work with Pusha T. But the way he goes, now what happened? They know, like it totally feels like that funny style of Slick Rick. I also like the basketball line. We're only in the sport to be LeBrons. When you're used to platinum, that gold be bronze. Just good, clever ideas. At some point he says Coke was an invented phenomenon. Just going back. Previous thing. Look up American history in the 80s. And then he ends it with saying, we specialize in not getting locked up, Akon. Now I had to look at Lyric Genius. Everyone makes fun of me for liking Lyric Genius. I can't help it. I think it's a good site. So that, I guess Akon had a famous song about being locked up, but then also Akon is like a convict. So it's just more of that funny play. He even tags that with saying, they're not going to get this, which really invites you to come get it. Next song is called Scrape It Off the Top with Don Toliver and Lil Uzi Vert. I really don't care for this beat. I'm sorry. I'm giving this one a 7, Pharrell. I'm giving that one a 7. I like the tinkling sounds, and it sounds very modern, but like, it just doesn't quite fit the rest of the album. And maybe that's on purpose. In the Breakfast Club interview, when he talked about this song, Pusha T said, you have to culturally be out there. So working with Don Toliver and Lil Uzi Vert, considerably younger people, like having them on the song, this really, it worked too. I was driving around listening to this album with my son who loves Pusha T, and we were listening to the song, and he goes, is that Don Toliver? Like immediately, like the second it starts out, is that Don Toliver? Like I like Don Toliver too. I reviewed his album. I like Don Toliver. He was like, is that Don Toliver? He got all excited. And I'm like, yeah. And then coming up next is Lil Uzi Vert. And he's like, really? You know, so like it does work to get like the younger generation excited. And Lil Uzi's verse is really good. What the mother F's a roof. I'm off the chain. Don't cut me loose. I'm off the chain. I'm off the noose. Just a really good line. And then Pusha later has a very charismatic, funny line again, where he tags everything with my boy, talks about the carrots and the bunnies that are chasing him, and then talks about you being gorillas. A whole bunch of a whole menagerie of Pusha T here. He does say that he has banana clips on the techs. My son said that techs don't have banana clips. I don't know, because I don't even know what a tech is, but he plays a lot of a video game. Oh, what's that one called? not Call of Duty. It's some game. CSGO, Counter-Strike Go. And I think he's learned a lot about guns because of that. So you can tell me in the comments, do techs have banana clips? Hear Me Clearly is a song which I've already reviewed on the Nego album. I like the ominous low synthesizers on here that fit with the rest of the album. But this whole song is just the most half-baked. This is, along with Let the Smokers Shine, the worst track on the album. I just don't particularly care for this. Although I did just get, the last time listening to it, to make the roof Harry Potter. Like the ceiling in Harry Potter looks like the sky. So he had to pay extra to get his car to have that kind of roof. That's kind of cool. Open Air is the next track. It's another Pharrell song. Great sub bass, kind of booming. What I really like here is Push described, I'll just call him Push, how Pharrell made himself be more street. That I think he heard the beats from Kanye and decided to try to be more street and less futuristic, and that's what we hear here. And that's why I'm going to end him off here with a strong 8 on Open Air. One thing I really like here is this verse. He doesn't get political very often, but this is an interesting, see my heart been black, ain't no hope here, and we've been let down by who's supposed to care. So that's an important idea. They've been let down by people who are supposed to care. Me and Stevens, Gullwings, those is rare. Ain't no Tonys in my circles. We Sosa's here. So I think that's like a play, because he's talking about Scarface, and there's Tony Montana, and there's Sosa, and they're rivals, and Sosa was the plug and all that, and he was, so higher up than Tony Montana was. But I also think he's trying to sound like so sincere, which is a Jay-Z line. So I think he's trying to sound like so sincere, we Sosa's here. In these 10 crack commandments, I'm Moses, yeah. The yeah is kind of a cheap line, but still, it's a funny idea. And then it all ends with I Pray For You, featuring Malice and Labyrinth, produced by Kanye. And the funny thing happened. So, I always talk about how I listen to this music. So I was listening to this music. I was working on some lesson planning for tomorrow. Pronominal adjectives, which adjectives in French go before the nouns, which ones go after. And I was listening to this, and my daughter was playing the new Lego Star Wars game on the Switch, the Utapau level. And I was sitting there, and she goes, "Is this Labyrinth?" I was like, I don't know. I don't know who Labyrinth is. And she's like, "Oh my God, that is Labyrinth." I don't watch Euphoria, Dad. I don't like it. I don't want to watch it. But the soundtrack is amazing, Dad. You have no idea how good Labyrinth is. Labyrinth is amazing. Just all these singing and these sounds and the organ and his voice. So give it up for Goat for being able to place this. Between this and Scrape It Off, we really do have a very efficient way of engaging the youth. And really, Kanye definitely opened up this lane for gospel-style rap, this beautiful voice of Malice with organs playing, church organs. The organ slightly modulates at points. It's really nice. There's full-on Gregorian chants in between the verses. It really is nice. And this idea of praying for your enemies. One of the only Pusha-T abstract lines, the ankle of my sweat still elastic. I don't know what that means, and I like it. You bought the tennis balls for the wrong sport. And some more of his great trademark, very specific crack lines. I hit it in the porch light. He talked about shooting the video for the song Grinding in his Mama's Projects. Funny story about me. So, I gave up on hip hop around 2002, but I moved to Oakland, California. And when I moved there, I still wanted to learn about what was good hip hop from Oakland. So I went on LimeWire, which is this website that used to exist, and I downloaded everything I could. I found this song called Hyphy, which is a pretty good song. And then I found this E40 song called Grinding. And that was my introduction to E40. Dale Earnhardt Signature Edition, limited package. Boom, boom, boom. The best remix. God damn, I love that song. Makes me love E40. You don't like E40 though, because every time I put out an E40 video, I get 0 views. But I really like E40. And part of the reason I like E40 is because of that E40 song that I discovered on LimeWire called Grinding. And I couldn't believe how good this E40 song was with this beat, this very futuristic and interesting beat. Now, of course, you're laughing because that was an E40 remix. Back in the old days when you download songs, you just someone would name them, and you just had to hope they were right. So I thought it was an E40 song. It's a Clips song. It was produced by Pharrell, starring Malice and Pusha-T, the two members of Clips, the brothers who are on this song again. So making reference to grinding is not just funny for me, getting to think Dale Earnhardt Signature Edition, limited package. Not just that, but also thinking about this song and their history and drawing back to this monumental work that they were able to do with the Neptunes and with Clips. Really, really good. And then there's this break, and then we get the verse from Malice. So Malice is Pusha T's brother who converted to Christianity or became very, very Christian and dropped off of the game. He's just been appearing like he was on Jesus is King. He was on the Nego album, and here he comes back again on a Pusha T album. So it does feel like there might be a reunion in the mix. By the way, the beat here, this is going to be another 9. That's going to be another 9. But the Malice verse is just so great because he talks about getting out of it. And he talks about the trauma of the streets. And this is one of my favorite things that's been happening in gangster rap and crack rap that I've been noticing since I got back into paying attention to it. Just talking about it as a traumatic event. Again, going back to that FD Signifier video about the sort of trauma inherent in African American communities. Vietnam flashbacks, I get triggered by a sniff. So just like what he used to do actually caused him trauma, and he had to flee into the arms of Jesus to get away from it. X told you hell is hot, I told you to repent. A very funny line. I really like this too. Watch my brother round you B-words, I know he pretends. I greet you with the love of God that don't make us friends. What a great line, you know? That like, if you're a Christian, you have to greet people with the love of God, but that doesn't make you friends. A really, really good line. Like, I've liked Malice before, but this is really just a great... This is one of the best verses on the album. This may even be the best verse on the album. Although he does sound a lot like... his voice sounds very, very similar. So there's my review of the album. Now, you might be wondering, how does this Pusha T pop-off end? Who wins, Kanye or Pharrell? I'm not even going to add them up. I'm not. Because you know who wins? Well, first of all, okay, Kanye got more points, but it doesn't quite count. Because one of the songs was co-produced by Pharrell, and also Pharrell did all of his stuff by himself. Kanye has a whole bunch of co-producers, so we might have to take fractions off of that point. We have to kind of carry the 1, divide it by A, multiply by the square root of X. In reality, they're tied. In reality, this is all a joke. The winner is Push. The winner is Pusha T, a rapper whose ability to be personable, to be forward-thinking, to be street, to be industry, managed to get them to work together and do something so great. The other winner, of course, is us, because we got to have this really, really wonderful album. So thank you to everybody who is giving me money on Patreon. I take your money and I buy music. I'm going to buy this album whenever I can. Good Lord. There's 60 of you now. So this is getting more and more difficult. I think you just like watching me struggle with this. So I hope you see your name on there. If you're one of the people. Matthew, you're one of the new ones. I had to put you in the middle because this other dude dropped out. But I see you. I see that you're there. Oh my God. You see all these people? So you can join them. Patreon.com/Professor Sky. If you want to see me try to add your name to this list, I might have to do a new list at some point. But I really appreciate all this support because it helps me to do this. Okay. Well then, until next time, I'm going to do some rock and roll reviews coming up soon. And tell me in the comments who actually do the numbers. Would someone count up who won? Because I think it was Kanye, but I don't even really know. I was told there'd be no math. There's the camera.